Okay, so this one's called Camlistore. It's about a project I've been working on about 6 years. I work on it with Mathieu Lonjaret here. He's from France. We don't hack on it together in person too often, but we've been hacking the last few days. So I'll talk at the beginning about what it is. He'll give you some updates at the end, and then following this, we have a birds of a feather at 3, from 3 to 4 for installing. So if anyone wants help getting your own instance set up and running, we can help you afterwards. So on the website, we say Camlistore is a way to store, sync, share, model, and backup content. So I'll kind of step through some of those and what it is. But first, I want to tell a little story about this crappy dining room table or living room table. I'm moving into a new place, and I had no furniture really. And we wanted to have Thanksgiving at my house, and we didn't have a table here. So we went down and made this thing really quickly. Um, I went to one store to get the lumber. I went to another store to get a saw. Brought them to my house, made a table, all's happy. I don't care at this point if the two stores go out of business. I still have my table. Likewise, this is kind of how things used to work with computers. You would buy a computer, or you'd buy a disk, and you'd buy some software, or use some open source software. But the end result is you use some tools, and you own the thing that you produced with the tools. Nowadays, it's not quite like that. Nowadays, everyone just uses the cloud, and it's great. These are fun tools. I use all of them. The problem is they have all the disks, and you don't have any of the disks. So you're always at risk of something failing, and there's this list of sites that have shut down and people have lost all their data. So my main motivation is I want to have all my stuff in, 50, 80 years or whatever, if I live forever. So I want to I don't really want to sysadmin a machine necessarily, but I want to make sure that I have access to all my stuff in the future. So to reiterate some things here, this is personal storage system. So this is like, think of it like you have your maybe Gmail or something account with all your email. Everything goes in there. You don't have to care about deleting. You just search and find the stuff you want. And there's no quotas or whatever. So you just keep everything and you keep it for life and you share selectively out of your personal store of everything later. So we'll talk about storing first. We'll talk about the acronym. So it was supposed to be a temporary name. Unfortunately, it's stuck. It stands for Content Addressable Multi-Level Index Storage. I needed a directory name when I started hacking on this 6 years ago, and I haven't found a better name. So it's content addressable. At the base layer, everything is just blobs. So the base layer is very simple. It stores content addressable blobs. You can enumerate them. Here you can see that I put in hello and world, and they have 6 bytes each, and then you can get them out. It doesn't know anything about metadata. There's no permissions. I mean, everything's private. There's exactly one ACL. You can get your own stuff. That's it. Anything that can put blobs and enumerate them, it can plug into all this system. So we have implementations for, 3 implementations for local disk in various formats. One is blob per file. One is, more efficient packed representations. Any like cloud storage provider it works on. Then we have wrapping layers that can shard and route your blobs around based on different conditions. And you can encrypt on top of another one. You could replicate to remote servers. So in terms of syncing, all this stuff can sync however you want to configure it. There's some default configurations that people use, but if you want to wire it up yourself, the config file lets you. But I also have a coworker who has a place off in the woods, little like weekend cabin, and he has a really crappy internet connection there, so it's not enough to sync. He wants to do offsite backup between his main house and his little cabin in the woods, but he doesn't have enough network connectivity to actually like sync over the DSL line. So whenever he flies to his weekend cabin, he just brings a disk with him, but Camlistore has a mode that says, talks to the other one, says, what are all the blobs I don't have? Think of it like a git pull or something. I mean, Camlistore is basically your massive multi-terabyte git repo for life, or petabytes for life. And so Camlistore has a mode that says, give me all the blobs, put them on a disk, I fly there, and then dump the disk to the other one. And so he keeps them in sync this way. It also has importers from the outside world, so you can see your tweets or your Foursquare or whatever. People are writing more importers. This is a screenshot of the UI. You can see like there's a mix of my photos. I guess this screenshot doesn't have photos. I'll show some more. But it has check-ins that I've done the last few days at the hotel, some tweets with photos, and that's all being imported into Camlistore. So how do I put all that in? We have to have a way to model all the content. So a big part of Camlistore is kind of the data model. You saw on that first slide, Camlistore only stores these small little immutable blobs, so you can't really build many things. That's not really a fun way to interact with data, is just a blob level. So we have some higher level representations of data. I want to emphasize that Camlistore is not file-centric at all. A file is just one sort of thing that you can model in Camlistore. For instance, with the command line tools, you can write a little hello world to a file. You say camput file if you want to use the command line tools, and it gives you out the ref, but that ref isn't of the contents hello world. That's some metadata that describes a hello.txt, so you can see like the mod time and permissions. You can put in symlinks and directories and all this stuff. And you can actually see here one of the parts of the file is 13 bytes, and if you get that, there's your original hello world byte. So this could be like, 5 terabyte file, and it does the whole Merkle tree thing, rolling checksum. So if you like move it around by a byte, it doesn't re-upload 5 terabytes. It finds boundaries to split on and all that stuff. So it efficiently handles tiny things and huge things. Yeah, likewise, directories. Here I'm making a directory called foo. I touch a file called a and bar. I put in foo. It's a typed directory. It has entries. This is a static set of entries. Each one of those is a file. It's kind of cut off on the bottom, but it's not really important. So it does files. You can fuse mount it. You can use it like Dropbox. But let's talk about more interesting things. How do we represent like a tweet or something mutable? Because so far everything we've talked about is these like immutable snapshots of files. So Camlistore has this concept called a permanode. A permanode is just a signed random number, basically. Here we create some new permanodes. Think of it as like a little stem cell of data that can become other things. So every time you run permanode, it puts in a blob, and if we get one of these blobs, like that one, you could just see it's Camli type permanode, some random gibberish, and it's signed by this identity. And that identity is just a PGP public key, so it uses OpenPGP, and you can use your identity if you're already a PGP user. If you don't want to think about it, it can manage all your keys for you. And so what we do is we make one just arbitrary number, this permanode, and that establishes the ownership of that object in the world, and then you mutate it afterwards. So here we make a new permanode, call it x, and we can put an attribute on x and say title, it's some title. Now we think of a better title, so we can put the attribute title better title, and then we can ask Camlistore to describe it, and it says, oh, here's its attributes, title is better title. But that original title, some title, is not actually lost. If you look at CamTool claims, you can see a list of all mutations that have ever happened on that permanode. And you can actually do queries in the past, and you say, what did this object look like at, say, this time? And basically it just ignores mutations after that point. So you never lose anything. Notice the blob server storage interface on that first thread had no delete operation. This is like append-only storage, and you just mutate things and make new claims. You could make a claim that something is deleted, and then it looks deleted in Fuse or in the web UI, but then you could delete the delete claim, and then it shows up again. So yeah, you don't lose things. At this point, you just say camtool list, and you have a whole bunch of crap. And maybe some of these are chunks of data, maybe some of them are claims, some of them are permanodes, some of them are mutations or schema blobs. That is the role of the next layers. So I didn't mention search, but search is kind of fundamental to doing any of this other stuff. So if you think of this architecturally, you have like your blob storage, which is all dumb. Then we have some indexing on top of that, making sense of like what this whole mess is, because you don't really query that efficiently. So we're going to index all that crap, then have a search system on top of the indexes, and there's some like verification that signatures match so you can't spoof claims and stuff that's built into the indexing. Then we have an API on top of that, and then all like the fun stuff like the fuse mounting, the web UI, the command line tools all run on top of the API. The indexing is basically anything that can sort key value pairs. So any database you like is probably already supported. Including if you don't want to set up a database, you could use local files. The built-in LevelDB implementation is used. The index isn't important to the safety of your data. So you can keep all your blobs on something you trust or two things you really trust. And you can have your index locally on your laptop. And if you drop your laptop and you destroy your hard drive and you lose your index, it doesn't really matter because you could always just re-index it later. Then the search, we have two search systems. We have a search with a kind of a search syntax similar to Gmail's little search syntax you write in the query box, which is like single line, colons, and stuff like that, label, colon, foo, and it doesn't give you all the control that you might want. So if you want, you can also do a structured search. What happens internally is it takes the Gmail style cutesy search and turns it into the whole structured JSON search thing. And when the server starts up, it slurps in all your indexes into like compact representations in memory for the search query planner and stuff. So here's an example of a search. We make a permanode. We do a search and say, show me all permanodes that have attribute tag equal to funny. Nothing. Then we make that permanode that we created. We say, make it tag funny, and then we can find it. Now it shows up in the search. So that shows that the blob's going in, the indexer is noticing it, the indexer is updating the indexes, the search is then finding it. You can write it like that with a little cute syntax, or you can write out a whole complicated thing. You could say, oh, I want to do a logical OR of this sub batch and this sub batch, and yeah, you could do lots of crazy things that way, searching for files versus permanodes versus raw blobs. And so that's available via an API or the command line tool. More screenshots of the UI, and just in case the live demo doesn't work. This is doing geo searches. This is location Seattle is image before 2014. So there's Gasworks Park. Location Moscow. Notice it found both some photos of Moscow, but it also found check-ins in Foursquare, or Swarm nowadays, because the check-in has an associated, there's a permanode that represents the check-in, but there's also a permanode that represents the venue, pulled from Foursquare's API, and that thing has photos associated with it, and that thing also has GPS lat long associated with it. So it's able to find that this check-in has an associated permanode, and that has a location, therefore the location of that check-in was within the boundaries of Moscow. So you could just say, oh, is check-in as one of the search operator types. You could say, is check-in in Seattle? Is Pano, which is a cutesy little search operator that just says the width is over a certain ratio from the height. In the web UI, you can go in and look at the details of stuff. Like here's the attributes on a permanode, and you can edit them if you wanted. You can look at the raw blob, same as the command line tool, and say what is the blob and what does the indexer and search system have to say about it. So let's do some live demos. This morning, I posted this poll on Twitter, and I said, day of the Camlistore talk, should I write the talk or should I add features? And adding features won, so let's see if this works. Dun, dun. Okay, here's my live server. Okay, we're gonna take a picture of the audience. Everyone.
Turn on the light.
I don't know. No. I can see you all. It's a good camera. Everyone, look excited. Yeah. Okay. Let me go over to Tweetors. There is also like a live uploading mode, but that is not the new feature. So I want to try the Twitters, and I wrote live Camlistore demo. I'll attach that photo. Okay, it's tweeting. Sending tweet. Tweet sent. Hey, showed up. So what happened there is Camlistore had a live connection open to Twitter, and then I posted to Twitter. Twitter sent something on the live user stream connection to that. Importer ran, and then the browser also has a WebSocket open to here. So then Camlistore notices whenever you have the UI open in the browser, it looks at any search queries the UI is looking at. This is all written with React. And if a query you're subscribed to changes, the UI updates dynamically. Meanwhile, that also, it's stored in my house, but I also have a real-time sync going to S3. So in the process of that, it just uploaded whatever, another meg or something to S3. And if I didn't trust that my S3 copy was in sync, I could do start validation. And you could see that it runs in the background, and it scans both my local machine and S3 and tells me that, whether things are happy or not. So I have millions of blobs. I can show, yeah, really relevant, I know. Let me show a little demo here. Okay, so CamTool list. This is my local laptop in like a dev instance. I can, yeah, I'll show you cam mount. I'll do cam mount at home Camli, and I can cd into Camli, and you can see there's some directories like SHA1, whatever. So let's go into Camlistore root. I'll say camput file doc, which is a doc directory. So if I say camget this, you can see it's a directory, and if I run find on it, you can see like this is all the documentation for Camlistore. But when we put that there, we got this identifier, which is a static snapshot of the content. Now in the Fuse file system, if I cd into that directory, I can see it in Fuse, or I can, open it like this and read the docs. And this could be on a remote machine. This could all be cached. But I could also do stuff like I have this directory here called recent, and if I go into recent, I see these. But this directory is not actually a static snapshot. This is doing a query to say what are my recently created permanents on the server, and then I can see like here's an Army of Darkness Deep Dream that I just dragged over. But we could drag something else over there. So let's I don't know, for lack of something else, we'll take a screenshot of of this. And now I have it on my desktop. I'll drag it into Camlistore. Oh, Piggy is sad. Sad Piggy means that the WebSocket connection isn't active because I restarted the server. Okay, so there's the thingy. Let's do a better one. You could actually see the thing work. Okay, we'll go meta here. So now it showed up live. Okay, but if we go back to
go deeper.
Yeah, must go deeper. If we go in recent now, you can see that those showed up in my recent folder. And it's not really a folder. You can't delete from here. You can't add to it. But when you add permanodes in the web UI, they show up in Fuse and vice versa. You can do searches via Fuse. So.
Good question. You said that could be on a remote server?
Yeah. Any of the stuff can be routed however you want. So you can have all your blobs live like encrypted on S3 and unencrypted at home, but cached on your laptop and faulted in on demand and all sorts of stuff. Or you keep all the metadata locally, but all the big blobs remotely, or thumbnails locally. Like, some of it's more of a pain to configure than it should be right now, but everything is possible with the right configuration. There's how do I see the default server? There's that tool to dump the easy config to the complex config. Do you remember what that is? Camtool dump config. Yeah. Okay. So I actually have a file here called Camlistore, or what is it? Library. I forgot the OSX one. So, yeah, Camlistore uses whatever the correct. No, it doesn't. Okay. I thought it did. Okay, so this is like the simple config that most people use. Is like, if you start Camlistore by hand, you say go get Camlistore, or you download it from the website. It'll use a. This is level DB, right? Did we just use the old file name, kvdb?
No, this is wrong.
Okay. Well, this is an old one I have. You can use level DB as the default nowadays. I'm using an old sorted index. But then all my blobs are just going in this directory. Oh, we do use library for blobs. So you can see I have a file per blob. It's not necessarily efficient, but it's easy for debugging and getting started. Some file systems it's efficient. If you use like ZFS or Btrfs, it's more efficient, or ext4 with tail packing or whatever. But so there's a simple config. If you want to see what it actually maps to, there's this camtool dump config, and it shows you like the low-level config, and you could wire things up however you want. And each of these is kind of documented a little. The source code has better docs at the top of each one of these plugins about what key values it supports, and the error messages are really nice. If you screw it up, it tells you what you're missing. So you can have your thumbnail cache somewhere else. So if I go to like my my personal server here, you can see like it does infinite scrolling of stuff, and it faults it in on demand. It'll kind of infinite. I guess it was loading more stuff. Yeah.
So when you installed this, you did it. Well, you're the developer, but you would recommend that we download get the stuff from Git.
No, so we actually do have downloads. Camlistore.org/download. Oh, what is that? Ugly HTTP URL doing there. So there are binary downloads. somewhere. No, that's download go. I clicked the wrong one. Do we not have binary downloads now?
Yeah, on the 0.9.
Oh. Yeah, so there's a zip, and you could download Linux, OS X, or Windows binaries. It's all in Go, so we can just cross-compile to anything. You can run on FreeBSD or Plan 9 or something weird. If you're lazy, though, and you don't want to run on your own, we also have this thing that we've just created. This is Mathieu's project. He made this launcher so you could create an instance on GCE, and we fire up a VM and a container running your indexer. It runs like MySQL in a container and puts all your blobs on Google Cloud Storage. And you pay Google, not us, so this just does an OAuth flow and redirects you off to Google. But it instantiates it on a CoreOS instance, so you don't have to like really sysadmin things, and it auto reboots with security updates and stuff. So some people later, if you go to the birds of a feather thing, can install it that way, or some people can just install it by hand. It runs on like Raspberry Pis or Scaleway. Or you want to talk about anything while I try to remember what I skipped?
Question?
Yep.
How are remote data stores secured?
You authenticate, like, the question is, how are remote data stores secure? Are you talking about for blob storage?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody uses a folder on my computer as a data store, can I, the admin, go in and just look at all of it? Is it secured, encrypted in any way?
Well, if you're the admin on the machine and somebody else is using your machine, yes, you could look at it if it's not encrypted. They could choose to encrypt it, but if you're the admin of the machine, you can screw with them in a lot of ways, including like, owning their crypto code. So, I don't know, maybe they shouldn't trust you.
I think he's asking if it's encrypted at rest. Like, is it encrypted before it's sent up to the store or whatever?
Oh, no, it's optional. So
What's the purpose of the PGP key in config?
the PGP key is created automatically if you want. It's the unit of identity for so the grand vision of this is it can be multi-user too, and you got multiple users mutating permanodes. And so the signature that signs the mutation is who did it, and the indexer verifies the signature, so other people can't spoof your crap. So if you download, like, let's say a friend downloads an image or shares a JPEG with you, and you download it, and they put some crap in the XF metadata that the chunker aligns just right, so it looks like a claim mutation that you're making all your stuff public. That's another thing to talk about is sharing. If they don't have your private key, they can't spoof claims as you, and so the indexer can never be confused.
So you sign files prior to indexing?
You don't have to sign files. So files in that one thing, when I said hello the world.txt can put file world, and I just get this back. There's no signature on this. This is just like, if two users have exactly the same file with the same contents and the same modification time and the same permission bits, they'll get exactly the same thing. It's just like gets. In Git, there's like the blob and tree objects, and you build those up into the big old Merkle tree, and you sign the root. You sign the commit or the tag or whatever. So it's the same sort of thing. You would sign, you would make a permanode, and you would set its Camli content to something to associate that node is something else. Like, let's go into the web UI here. We could, let's see if this works. I could say can put permanode nothing. So you see nothing new in the UI because permanodes with no attributes are not interesting, so we don't render them. But if I say can put adder title foo, now you can see it's foo. Let me make it a little bigger. Oops. Foo, and now it's bar. It changes the bar. Or I could say like Camli node type twitter.com tweet, and I think I have to do a couple others. I say start date. No, I'm just going to show how it's like. Can put adder.
What are you showing us?
Well, I'm showing. I don't know how we got started. Signing things. Well, say all these things are signed, and all these objects like tweets are just made up a collection of attributes. And I don't know where I was going with that. You can sign the top level things. Okay, so I showed like we're gonna put in cam put file permanode world.txt. And so we just put in a world.txt file here. And if we look at it, look at the permanode, you can see the Camli content is set to this. And if I look at the raw blobs of it, here are the list of claims. And there was this claim that associated that permanode's content to be this value. And this value was just the static file. So that thing is unsigned. But the thing that is signed is the mutation, this one, the blob content. So this is a set attribute claim, and it's modifying this permanode, that's the subject. And this is the new value of attribute, where's attribute, of Camli content. And that's the signature that has to match this signer. So you sign things kind of at the top, not at the base data at the bottom. As far as encryption, you can choose to encrypt all your raw blobs too, either locally at rest or remotely at rest.
I have a question. So
sit back then.
Oh, sorry.
For synchronization across networks, what sort of traffic should I expect and what sort of ports? Like if I'm on a public Wi-Fi hotspot where all I've got is port 80 and port 443 that I can send and receive data on, can Camlistore get around that sort of stuff, or is it limited to a specific port? And a specific
The
protocol?
question is about synchronization and what ports have to be open. It doesn't listen on anything by default. So it would like connect out to something else that was available and then sync over that. And that is not as automatic as we want right now, for better or worse, so you kind of have to do it when you want it to do
So
it.
there's no actual like automatic file synchronization at this point?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you would have to like configure it like on, Wi-Fi connectivity change or on power do it. But yeah, we want to make that more automatic in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that you have Twitter integration. What other indexing languages do you have?
Yeah, so if we go to Camlistore, let's go to my production-y one. Camlistore importers. These are the current ones. So arbitrary RSS or Atom or whatever. Flickr, Foursquare, which is Swarm. Picasa, which is all Google Photos. Pinboard, Twitter. Kate here was working on a Runkeeper one. I have a lot of data in Runkeeper. We both have a lot of data in Runkeeper that we want to suck in. We want to work on one for the Google Android Wi-Fi logging stuff, so you can have all your tracks in here if you're recording it that way. But these are pretty easy to write. The API that's provided you don't have to think about blobs or signing. You don't have to think about scheduling too. It'll like automatically wake you up. You can choose to implement for Twitter. Today I added this long poll functionality. So if you optionally implement a feature to like wait for new updates, you can get run when there's new stuff, or you can just be scheduled automatically. Like I can go to Twitter here. It tells you kind of like what to do, like how to configure Twitter. Go to this and create an app. We don't have a default app for a lot of these because we just didn't want one point of failure that if our app is shut down, your thing stops working. So you create an app on Twitter and you put in your client ID and secret. You get as many accounts as you want, and you can configure the policy about how often it runs. So this one is running every 30 minutes, but it's also long polling all the time, so the tweets come in within milliseconds.
Is it set up to go back and scrape old posts or just grab new ones?
For almost all of these, it'll go back in time in the API as far as it can. Twitter's API is kind of busted in that it only goes back like 1,000 posts or 100 posts or something dumb. But this one also supports, notice here it says Brad Fitz, Camlistore ID or Twitter ID that plus zip file. You can upload your Twitter like data takeout zip file that has all your history, and it will also recognize that and slurp in all the content, which annoyingly has a different JSON format, slightly different, but almost the same, but different as the API JSON format. So yeah, new importers would be a great way to contribute to the project because they're pretty easy to write and like they're pretty fun.
I see that Facebook is missing.
Facebook is missing. It should. I don't really use Facebook as much as some people, so I'm not personally motivated to write it.
It would be a great way to escape from Facebook.
It would be. So one of the big features coming up is we want to do. Right now, when you go to that Camlistore launcher thing, well, I'll let Mathieu talk more about that. But let's go. More question.
Where's the metadata stored? Where is it inside the blob itself?
Okay, the question was, where is the metadata? There's no difference between data and metadata. When I say camtool list, this is both my data and my metadata. Let's get one of these. I don't know what this is. That is metadata. Let's get another one. That one is documentation. That is part of some file. And in this case, it happens to be the whole file, but this could have been a 64K chunk of a huge file.
Okay.
And it is the job of the indexer to go through this list of all this stuff and make sense of it all and build the right indexes for search.
So does the indexer generate the metadata, or is that an attribute you have to create?
That is another good question. You can both create your own metadata with like that cam tool, put attribute funny, or put a tag on things. There's also metadata that is the indexer synthesizes itself, which is like less subjective. Like the EXIF said, these are the dimensions of the photo. That's just true. Like you can't lie
Can it
about that.
pull, like geolocation data from photos, or?
Yep. So it indexes all the GPS data from photos, it builds an index of that. But then when I did a search query and I said like location Seattle, it did an API call to a geo provider to find the bounding polygon of Seattle or whatever. Yeah.
Does this have like a history, like a revision capability? So like if I-
Yeah. There was a slide or so earlier, you might have missed it, that you cannot delete anything. So
Okay.
if you set title to foo and then you set title to bar later, you can always go back and look at the world as it existed at any point in time. It's just a log of mutations. It's not.
And if one of those accidentally have my private key in it, there's a way to delete it.
You could go by hand and delete it. Yeah.
And then,
There's some like overrides to say delete, yes, I really mean it.
and then this might be a long question, but so my use case is I've got 3 friends. We're all willing to store each other's data, but we don't want to have access to it.
Yep.
And
So you would just encrypt it locally and upload the encrypted blobs to your friends, and they wouldn't be able to see them at that point.
So I mean, I want to run. I'm willing to have 3 instances on my computer where I'm storing my own stuff and storing their stuff.
Mhm.
2 instances. So I've got 2 other people that I'm storing their blobs, but then I want to send my stuff to their
Yep.
2 things.
So you would
How do I
write.
set that up?
So in dump config.
Do I have to have so I could use like a dynamic DNS service to get the name of their computer or whatever?
Yeah. So why don't I come back to that question? You want to talk about some stuff?
Sure.
About upcoming stuff? I feel like I'm hogging the mic here.
I'm going to be talking about what we've done most recently and what we plan on doing, and some of that is maybe a bit on the developer side, but you'll tell me if it's too boring. Yeah, I'll go increasingly less boring. The first thing is, as Camlistore is a pretty big project, Go project. It's made up of a lot of Go packages, as we try to do well. But some of those packages were not really very usable out of the context of Camlistore, but they should. So we've been working a lot on moving a lot of those and improving them and to put them on this other repo, which is Go for the Talk. So we're hoping to get more like exposure and contribution and testing for those packages. The other added value in doing that is that we get Travis CI for free because it's on GitHub. We used to have a continuous builder for our project, and we were hoping to switch to the Go project one, and we kind of let that bit rot a little bit. So for a while we didn't have any testing going on for the whole project. So the more we move to this GitHub repo, the better it is. And I'll skip the rest of the GitHub thing. Also, our website used to be updated occasionally, and now it's like we've made it all automatic. So like every commit is like scanned, and it updates all the packages documentation, and the documentation itself is always refreshed. Also, we've been getting a bit of grief over the fact that we don't really do point releases as often as we would like to. And so we've worked, even though we continuously work on the project, on the Git repo is always kept up to date. So we've worked a lot on improving our tools to make new Docker images, new binary releases, sorceries, everything automatic. and we are on the finishing touches to do like monthly releases. So we will be able to point people very soon to, okay, this is the latest release. You can fetch that if you want, if you don't like Git or whatever. And then onto the more exciting stuff is that Brad showed you the launcher that we have that runs on on Google Cloud. So your instance is on GCE, your blobs are on Google Cloud Storage, and we log everything on Google Cloud Logging. And what we plan on doing is to host a sort of DNS system for Camlistore.net, so that when it gets a GPG identity, it gives you back a subdomain on Camlistore.net. And then, thanks to our friend at Let's Encrypt, we would create automatically an HTTPS cert for that subdomain, so that this launcher will give you directly a Camlistore instance, which is on HTTPS with a domain name and with a valid HTTPS cert. And this is like, the main new feature we're going to have for sharing, I think.
Yeah, and then getting back to your question was about how to discover people's keys or something. Well, I forgot.
I was talking about syncing, just in terms of like doing cross Camlistore syncs to different computers, and what sort of like network traffic I should expect.
Okay. That was a different
You might
question,
think
but
of a different person.
I mean, your network traffic is proportional to how much crap you put in it, right?
I'm
And
mostly more just concerned about like port restrictions and stuff. Am I
No.
gonna have to set up a VPN in order to be able to do the syncing?
Oh no. And so eventually what we want to do is we don't currently do much peer-to-peer stuff right now because there aren't many users. But as we've been making it easier with this like cloud launcher thing, and once we like do automatic SSL, and we're probably gonna either run or use an existing DHT, like a distributed hash table, to find peers and stuff. In that case, if you have two users that are behind NAT, you can go into the Camlistore web UI and list your friends who are willing to host your encrypted data, and just put in their key IDs or their email addresses, which can then map to their key IDs. And they don't even know their IP address. They don't need to open a port. We do the normal NAT busting stuff and define them through the DHT wherever their current IP address is.
Okay.
So that's an eventual goal, because then we also want to do sharing. So if you take a bunch of photos, you can already go into the web UI and go to Camli House. You can already go in and say, oh, there's a great picture of Mathieu, and there's that and that. And notice when I check these over here, oops. Oh yeah, you can go through and click left and right and view photos. But back in the web UI, once I checked one, notice it opens up this thing over here. I guess I have to hit that click target exactly. Beep. You can then create a set with those items, and I could be like, I don't know, I created a new set with that, and we want to be able to share that. Right now, I can go in and I can say, camput share. Let's say I want to Camlistore. I put that file, that doc directory. Now I want to share that with somebody, but maybe it's that set of photos. I could say camput share that. Camput share, and it gives me back this thingy, which is a share claim. If I were to get that, this is a share claim that says, if you authenticate using type haveref, which is basically no authentication, you have this secret token where the token is this thing, then I grant you access to this transitive false, so you only have access to this one blob. So that's not very useful. So you can say camput share transitive, and now I have this one. This was what I actually wanted to do. And now it's a transitive share claim there. So this is a token I can give to the other person, and then they can mount this remotely and fault in the blobs from my server. And so they don't have to download the whole thing. They could just go in their, in their OSX Finder or Nautilus or whatever, and it would download the thumbnails of the JPEG from the beginning of the JPEG, and they don't even fault in all the data until they access it. But we want to make all this automatic. Instead of having to do camput share in the UI, you instead just share to them, and they get a little live notification on the side of their Camlistore that photos were shared with them. And then we do the whole decentralized social network thing, because why not? And screw the centralization.
You integrate
integrate Camlistore behind typical office automation tools like Microsoft sells Word and Excel and so forth, but they're public domain versions.
The question is,
So when I do a save, I have the choice of putting it to Camlistore, get prompted appropriately, isn't it? And it goes into my Camlistore or whatever.
the question is about integration with like Office and such tools. And do you care about the data model, or do you care about the storage of the XLS bytes? We do not currently like model spreadsheets or anything. We'll leave that up to Open Office XML and stuff. But in terms of storing the bytes, you can.
I want the user interface of Word to see Camlistore as a document repository, essentially.
Well, if you fuse mount it, it shows up, and you can put it in your favorite places over here. So like cam mount, home, Camli. I'm already up mounting it. Perfect. So here it is, and I could be like, oh, I can't do that, can I? How do I go up? I could be like, Camli, boom, it's favorites. So now it shows up in Microsoft Word, and I store it into Camlistore.
So I ran, I got my documents folder in Camlistore for a few years, and that's pretty much probably the use case that you're looking at. And what I do is I just symlink. You have to create something called a root inside of the file system. So I create a documents root, and then I symlink that to my home documents directory, and then you put that in your finder.
Yeah, so we go to roots. These are foo, and now, yeah.
When you save a file, it would go in.
The fuse layer does all of that.
Okay, so let's see if this works. So here's the web UI, and I've created this directory. Let's see, Camli roots foo, and I will write hello to Linuxfest Northwest.txt, and it showed up there. So I just wrote to my local file system, or what looked like my local file system, but it just replicated to everything.
But if it's Word, you want not just the file information, but information out of the Word, like authorship and so forth.
It's all part of the file. So it's not going to parse your tags out and set attributes.
Yeah,
so you could add metadata extraction for Word files. That's something that there's a precedent for in the X.
For the video, the question is about metadata extraction from Microsoft files or whatever. We currently only extract data from all the image formats, some of the video, audio formats, various other OpenE formats. But yeah, we don't have metadata extractors in the indexing system for everything. That's another way that you can contribute. Somebody added the MP3 ID3 tag extraction. So if you put in all your music, you can sort by could do a search by genre and stuff like that now.
And that's just purely for kind of indexing or generating thumbnails, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And search.
And search.
Yeah.
Look at the nice.
Well, it has to be indexed to be searchable.
You get replication behind the scenes nicely.
Yeah.
And you can do searches on the various things that Word keeps.
Oh,
So, I love my Dropbox text editor, and I would love to replace it with this on my phone. Sorry.
Okay.
So, how do I edit these files on my phone, short of hacking it and adding views?
Yeah. So I think I had one slide earlier with like the architecture diagram. The question was he likes his Dropbox text editor on his phone, but this is just like viewing data, not editing data. So what we hope is we've kind of fleshed out all this stuff, and now we're kind of moving up the stack a little. Importers are pretty easy to write at this point. The command line tool is pretty fleshed out. Fuse is okay. It needs a little polish. The web UI, we don't like JavaScript, but we're looking at getting that better. Apps is interesting, because now that we have a nice app, or this nice API, we want to be able to make it really easy to run apps that use the API and live in a sandbox, kind of similar to Sandstorm or whatever, where you run in a container with limited access, and we give you like a Camlistore handle to the API, but anything you write is in a sandbox, and anything you read is in a sandbox. If you're in the outer sandbox in your main UI, you can see everything that all the apps wrote, but one app can't go rogue and delete other stuff. So I had an old document management system that I wrote for like scanning stuff and putting it in the shredder, and when that was like an old CMS that I ran on something else, and we've been migrating that to run on top of Camlistore as kind of a proof of concept Hello World app. I hope that like other people build other apps, especially like mobile ones. And you were going to talk about your data collection thingy.
Oh,
In Intaka?
in Keto is interesting, but I was actually going to say Android has a similar thing to Fuse. It's called Storage Access Framework.
Or document provider? Is it document?
Document provider is the class.
Okay.
Or the contract.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's possible that we might be able to implement a Android storage volume thing that is backed by Camlistore. In which case, you use any like Android text editor to.
It just looks like a file on the Android phone.
Yeah, just because why not? We'll do. Hi, Matthew. Okay. So this is the Android app, which I can't really show, but I can do share with Camlistore, and you see it's uploading, and it's stuck 50% of the way through, but you can see like the bytes and.
Sorry, this is the Camlistore.
Oh, there it goes. So it showed up. Yeah, so that's an Android app, and it hasn't been updated in like a couple of years, or not substantially updated. So it doesn't use the new Android document picker kind of Fuse-like framework. But if we implemented that, then if it were installed on the phone, if you had Camlistore installed at all, it would just show up natively as a place to load or store stuff from on any Android app. So if you like Android development, you're welcome to do that. Yeah.
Your entire existence secure and replicated. These are the sort of things you need.
Yeah. This is fun stuff. Did you have another question? Okay. Yeah.
I just had a question real quick. I take a lot of photos. Is there any way to do like deduplication? Like I have photos stored everywhere.
Oh, I didn't even mention. I take it for granted that when I say content addressable, I mean everything is deduped for free. So yeah, okay. I had bazillions of duplicates of all my photos because I had like that old backup and that old backup and that stuff on Dropbox and that stuff on Google Drive and that stuff on that machine, and every one of those backups was like a subset of the other backups. Yeah. And when I put them all together, it was like terabytes of crap, but it wasn't really that much. It was really just duplicates. And so yeah, this dedupes everything.
And does it get rid of all that extra data? Like if I suck all that in, will it get rid of it or just display it as dedupe?
Well, it'll for instance keep track of like that you had two files at different paths, maybe with different case of the file names, but that's like a couple bytes. It doesn't really matter. It's like a drop in the bucket. Okay. But the bytes of the JPEG themselves, there's only one instance stored. So and you can't even make it store more than one because it's content addressable.
So it does deduplication by the way of deltaing, so to speak.
Well, there's no deltaing involved. It's just that you just cannot store the bytes foo twice because it has exactly the same SHA-1 and it's content addressable. Okay. I mean, it's the same way as Git or anything else.
Which gives you bit rot detection as well.
It does. You can verify all your stuff. And we're currently using SHA-1. I was waiting for somebody to complain about this, but all of the blob refs is designed to be future-proof because I saw MD5 come and die, and then I saw SHA-1 come and almost die, and so I'm waiting for SHA-256 to die too. But it's future-proof in that you put in the hash there, and you can configure the policy on your server about which ones you accept. So once SHA-1 is broken, which is effectively now, you stop accepting them, but you can still verify things in the past. So we're going to be switching to SHA-256 or 512 for upcoming releases.
What about Blake 2? I heard like a lot of people have chosen that.
I don't know.
Have you heard of sync thing?
Yeah. I think I even.
Work is a sync thing plugin.
What is?
This Camlistore might work as a sync thing plugin for doing the sync part for you.
Yeah. Maybe. I get a lot of questions about like,
Plus
have you mixed X with Y with Z? And a lot of these things are possible, but it's sometimes unclear why, other than just mixing it.
Well, there was a sync use case a couple guys brought up in front,
Okay.
right? They wanted to know how to sync their stuff between their own computers.
Okay, the models may not match. I'm not sure. I don't know what their API looks like.
I would recommend checking out the sync thing because you might be able just to implement their work on your stuff.
And make a blob server that's
on
terms with
their
theirs.
sync model is actually really, really well done.
They do the firewall traversal. They have
Okay.
DHT.
Yeah, so that could be sync thing could be a blob server implementation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe one of you wants to step up and write one.
I wish.
Can you talk about making like a subset of your content publicly accessible or as a feed?
Yeah. So
I mean, I'm sure you have a thought.
okay. So back to sharing. I showed you. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I did that like can put share transitive thing, right? So right now that is just sharing like a snapshot of something, and you can say here's a bunch of photos. We also want to be able to share like a whole set, but the one thing we want to do is be able to share a search query. So you can say like my last 30 days of photos, or really anything you view in this UI here is a search query, even your scroll position and stuff. So if you wanted to share what you're looking at right now, you snapshot that search query along with the time and all that stuff, and you give it to somebody else and say, you can get anything transitively reachable from the results of this first search query as the first hop. So once you do that, it's kind of fun. You could say anything that I take. You could share something you haven't created yet. You could say, we're going on a hike together. You have access to all my photos on this phone from this time for an hour until the end of the day, and your server could be slurping them in real time, like as you upload them, even though they haven't happened yet. Yeah.
What do you do if you host some service like uploading pictures to some jerk uploads an 8 gig ISO?
What happens if somebody is a jerk and uploads at 8 gig ISO?
Yeah. And you have, for instance, you have it in the woods that you're trying to do a replicant on, that you're trying to do a replication on. And
Well, you're the jerk because this is your own data.
Okay, let's say I'm really drunk one night and upload an 8 gig ISO and say, oh god, I only have 12 gigs of disk in these servers.
We are gonna make a garbage collector.
Oh, well, there is a garbage collector. It's not entirely. So you mean you made a mistake and you want to delete it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You would delete the permanode, and then there's like a YCS actually delete this thing, and then you could run the garbage collector over everything, which kind of doesn't really work. It's not automatic right now. I feel like there's a mode when you start the server up or something.
No, we were supposed to do that, but it's not done.
There's a to-do for it that says, before the indexer starts, before we start serving, go over the blobs, run the garbage collector, and actually delete the blobs that are not referenceable by any claims, including the ones you deleted.
We have a generate garbage collector. We need to apply it to all the permits.
Yeah.
Is there anything that prevents the service from running 100% local, say off the net?
Yeah, this is running. I mean, this one's running on my laptop. And I was hacking on it offline. Yeah, you don't need any cloudy things. So like, our kind of model about the cloudy stuff is like use it but don't trust it. And so we happily use all the tools and we happily use all the storage, but we use the storage twice and we import the data from the tools. So any cloud thing can go away and we'll just switch to the next one.
How many servers have you tested it with? So let's say I've got 10 friends who are willing to store my stuff. And then how does the data get distributed? Let's say I've got all my content's done on low bandwidth thing, and it uploads. Can I set the priority so it uploads to one server and then that one sends to all the rest, or peer-to-peer?
Yeah.
Sharing,
I mean, you would configure it at every node what the policy is. You don't like set a path through the network on a single blob, but you could say on the first node you could say send all my crap to this friend, and on that friend's instance you could have it configured to go beyond that.
I wouldn't have it set send from this phone to all 10 devices.
Yeah.
I would probably have it send to 2.
Yeah, for instance, I run a primary server and my phone goes to it, and my like other stuff faults in from that, but then it uploads to S3 and stuff like that from there. But yeah, all that sort of like syncing to your friends is kind of an upcoming focus along our kind of next release is all about sharing and automatic TLS and automatic discovery of friends and syncing and sharing to friends and backing up to friends and stuff like that.
That's in Git right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't do releases that often, and so it makes the project look dead.
Is
Not for long.
the UI also stored as refs in your data store?
Is the UI stored as REST?
Yeah, like is the JavaScript, does it have a ref? Let's say I want to stick an HTML page inside my personal Camlistore and reference all of the things in there. Say I want to make a public profile.
Talking about publish.
Yeah, we have an app, which a server-side app, which is effectively a client to Camlistore, and which you can use to publish all your photos, for example.
So if you want to serve like a static website or whatever out of a certain hostname /path or host path maybe /, you could say that equals this perma node and walk it as if it's, you know, like Fuse or something like that. But it's not actually using Fuse. But walk it the same way, walk down directories as Fuse would do, set the right content type, and, you know, basically it's HTTP to Camlistore converter, and we call that publish. It's one of the kind of hello world apps.
But to answer your original question, that UI is not stored as refs in your store.
Yeah, this
is actually just part of the Camlistore source code.
This UI, if I go to like server status.
There's no blob that has a little piggy in your storage.
Oh, that's server side. Debug config.
We actually do, because it's in the website documentation, so it is
Oh,
stored
that's
as
true.
a blob.
Yeah, so the UI is basically just one app. This is the auto-generated low-level config. We didn't actually write this config, but it is a built-in app. But you can also run other apps as child processes that use the same API. Actually, we should break this out. We should break the UI out into a child process in the future. Yeah, is that okay?
So to get the Google Docs like functionality where I save it to my folder and it's automatically synced, I have to use the Fuse system, the Fuse mount, the Camli mount, to have a folder that's monitored. Is that true?
If you want it to be auto-uploaded?
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can run a cron job that says "can put this folder."
And can putting a folder will get all the content.
Yep, recursively, and it caches the inode stat to metadata lookup, so it tries to be nice to your file system and stuff like that.
So
Linux is generally fast. OS X sucks the file system speed, but
That's probably the way to do it if I don't want my files to be magically gone sometime. The cron job is that, like, for basic use, that would probably be bad.
Yeah. I mean, as whatever, you could replace whatever backups you're doing now with it, right? Just think of it as a backup mechanism if the snapshot at a certain time. I actually back up my home directory with it and just make a new perma node for every like hour or so, or I update an existing perma node with a claim, so then I could go look at my whole home directory as it existed at any point with a granularity of like an hour or something.
Isn't there this time machine things based on the Fuse library for Macs? Like,
That is different. That uses HFS and hard links for directories.
No, but on top of Camlistore. Dustin Salings had made it?
Oh, right. There was somebody made an OS X client. This was a while ago that let you look at a perma node, and it had a slider, and that slider changed the parameter to Fuse for @. So you can CD into a directory. If I go into Camli, notice there's a magic directory called @. I think it has a README. Look at that. And you can specify a time and then CD into that. So I can say, go into this. And now there's that foo root I had, and that file did not exist at that time. But if I go into instead, I don't know, next year, that now the file appeared.
How does that work?
It hasn't. It hasn't been deleted yet.
We need to talk about the time travel feature.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention, I actually run sync thing. So I have a Fuse mount on my server. I have Fuse mounted on my main Camlistore server, and then I have sync thing running on that, and I have it running on my Android phone. So I have a local copy of my whole documents folder on my phone that's not on the cloud or anything. So it is possible to do the integration. I don't think that's a good way going forward, but it is something that works now.
Backup storage is just somewhere that sync thing already syncs.
So I'm Fuse mounting on the server, and then sync thing is using that as a sync target.
So just syncing with Fuse mount. Yeah. Is all metadata stored on disk? So the service has a bunch of metadata. Where is that stored? Blobs.
It's all blobs, all the way down.
Well, yeah. Well, it's all blobs all the way down to some degree. Metadata that was explicit because you set tag equals funny or something on a photo, that's just a blob. But if it's an index that's just there for like efficiency reasons for sorting, like genre equals electropunk or something on your MP3, we could always get that later by reindexing. That's in the sorted key value thing, and that one isn't important. It isn't important. If you lose it, you can just recreate it, and you could choose to have those in different places. And there are very different data structures. So the sorted thing you can have like locally in on your SSD on your laptop, but your blobs you could have remotely somewhere else.
Does the time machine functionality need plutonium?
Yeah, it does not need plutonium. You just have to install Go. All right, we're out of time. So come to the Birds of a Feather. 15 minutes. Thanks. Look at the website. Where it is?
Building 201.
201 in this building. So is that upstairs? I guess.
Yes. That's downstairs.
That's how room numbers normally work.